A senior foreign policy writer at the current affairs magazine Newsweek. He joins me now live from New York. Tom, good to have you here with us on TRT World. Now, the role Türkiye and its president has played when it comes to mediating the conflict in Ukraine is very much similar to that of the United Nations. In fact, according to some experts that I've spoken to, they tell me Türkiye has done a better job than the UN.
I think that's very easy to argue. I would agree with that assessment. You know, when I came on TRT yesterday, I discussed, I predicted that there would probably be some sort of plan in the works, given President Erdogan's calls with both Putin and Zelensky. A ceasefire is probably the highest expectation I had coming into that. So I think it's certainly a significant development. Now, I think the Ukrainians certainly have a reason to be suspect for Russia's intentions there. At the same time, we've seen both Zelensky, we've seen the U.S., we've seen Russia all thank Turkey for its position. Turkey's very uniquely situated. It's a complex relationship that Turkey has with both Zelensky and especially with Putin that extends not just to Ukraine, but to Libya, to Syria, the Nagorno-Karabakh region. But it seems to have bore fruit in past conflicts, and there certainly seems to be something progressing in this conflict as well. Whether it's going to be the end immediately, I don't think so, but certainly it's something to keep an eye out for.
Indeed, and Tom, I think the big question here is what would bring this conflict to an end? It's been almost 10 months since the war, 11 months rather, since the war in Ukraine started. Tell me, what is your navigation through the latest events?
Well, it's tough to say because certainly a ceasefire is something still that benefits Russia, and that's for the simple fact that Russia still controls Ukrainian territory. So even if Mr. Putin were to say today that he's declaring an indefinite ceasefire and the battle were, let's say, to stop even just temporarily, Russia would be in an advantageous position because it still holds more territory than it did in February. Now, Russia has not signaled, despite the ceasefire, that it's willing to do that. There's still the active battles are still happening all over the lines on the Donbass, especially. So we don't really know exactly what the end game of Russia is. We know that President Zelensky has said he wants all of his territory back, which includes Crimea, of course, by the way. I'm not sure whether either side, their views or maximalist views right now are realistic. So I don't see an end to this conflict, a lasting end, until both sides realize or at least assess that they can no longer advance, that there is no longer anything they can get more from fighting. Now, I don't think we're there yet right now. I don't know when we'll be there, but certainly it's something that I think would be the only way to see a lasting end to this conflict, which is still very much alive despite this ceasefire.
And it's clear, Tom, that both sides have to make concessions, especially when it comes to bringing this conflict to an end. Before I let you go, Tom, let me ask you, do you think this war is going to end in the battlefield or through diplomacy on a negotiating table?
I think that just about every war ends with diplomacy in some fashion or another. Whether it's on favorable terms of one side or the other depends on the battlefield, of course. But I don't see a conventional military victory at this moment for either side. I still think that, you know, despite the difficulties Russia is facing, and certainly they're not insignificant, Ukraine, of course, is still the one that's being attacked. And Russia knows its incising costs upon Ukraine. It's imposing difficulties just to live in the country at a very difficult season, of course, when it comes to electrical grid attacks, infrastructure attacks. It's still a big drain on Ukraine, which is very heavily dependent on the West, whose aid in the long term is never a guarantee, although certainly it's something that they're still committed to. So I think, but right now, both with the sanctions affecting Russia, with Ukraine being dependent on Western aid, there's a lot of contingencies around this. I think that still make this a very volatile conflict. I think diplomacy is still the only way out. I'm not sure how that manifests, but I think ceasefires are perhaps a good start to that, intentions good or not.
All right, Tom O'Connor, it's always a pleasure. Thank you very much for talking to us here on TRT World.